begins with a lonely scene on a dusty road where a young girl stands behind her father, waiting without understanding what is happening around her. The sun is hot, the wind is dry, and her small bag is the only thing she owns. She has lived her whole life, moving from one place to another, never staying long enough to call anything home. Her parents drifted from town to town, doing odd jobs, chasing promises, and leaving before anything good could come. She grew used to change, used to hunger, used to silence. But nothing prepared her for the moment when her father agreed to hand her to a stranger for $5. She didn't even know the stranger's name at first. She only saw a quiet cowboy standing near his horse, looking at her with calm eyes. He wasn't angry or impatient. He looked confused, then troubled, as if he couldn't believe what he was seeing. Her father spoke in a rough voice, saying she was old enough to work and that she would be better off earning her keep somewhere else. The girl didn't understand the words completely, but she understood the feeling. She felt it in her stomach, the heavy, sinking realization that she wasn't wanted. Her father took the $5 from the cowboy, folded the small bills, and put them in his pocket without looking at her once. The girl didn't cry. She had learned long ago that crying didn't change anything. She stood very still, holding her bag tightly, waiting for instructions. For a few seconds, the cowboy didn't move. He stared at the father, then at the girl, then at the worn $5 bills in his hand. The situation didn't make sense to him. It wasn't a trade. It wasn't a sale. It was something much sadder, someone giving up a child because life had turned too hard. The girl kept her eyes on the ground. She expected to be told to work, to walk, to obey. She had no idea what came next. She only knew she was alone now. More alone than she had ever been. The cowboy finally crouched down to her height. His voice was warm and calm, the kind she had almost forgotten existed. He told her his name was Luke. He asked for hers. She whispered it so softly that even the wind almost carried it away. Luke nodded gently, repeating her name with respect, as if it mattered. No one had said her name with care for a long time. Luke didn't pull her arm or drag her. Instead, he asked if she wanted to come with him. She looked up at him with uncertain eyes. No one had ever asked her what she wanted before. She didn't know how to answer. Luke placed a soft hand on her shoulder, not to push or guide, but simply to let her know he was there. He promised she would be safe. His voice was steady, not filled with empty promises but with something real. Something that made her feel, for the first time in years, that she wasn't invisible. He lifted her bag onto his horse and helped her climb up gently. She sat stiffly, unsure of the proper way to sit on a saddle. Luke made sure she felt balanced before he mounted behind her. It wasn't a fast ride. He moved slowly, giving her time to adjust, giving her space to breathe. The town behind them grew smaller and smaller until it became just another place she once passed through. But this time, she wasn't walking away on tired feet. She was riding towards something new, even if she didn't know what it was. Luke didn't talk much during the first part of the journey. He didn't force conversation or ask painful questions. Instead, he spoke softly about the land, the miles ahead, and his ranch. He told her there were horses, open fields, and a quiet river nearby. He didn't make it sound like a dream. He made it sound real. Something steady. Something that didn't disappear after a week. The girl listened silently. She didn't know if she should believe him, but she liked the way his words carried peace. Every so often, she looked over her shoulder, half expecting her parents to come running after her. But the road behind her stayed empty. A strange mixture of relief and sadness filled her chest. She didn't want to return to her old life, but leaving it still felt like a deep cut she couldn't explain. Luke noticed her quietness, but he didn't press her. He understood the silence of someone who had suffered quietly for too long. As they traveled, she studied the cowboy quietly. Luke wasn't a rich man. His clothes were simple, his hat worn, his boots dusty from long days of work. But he carried himself with calm strength. He didn't remind her of anyone from her past. He didn't shout. He didn't complain. He didn't look at her like a burden. He seemed to treat her existence as something that mattered. That alone felt strange and new. By the time the sun began to set, she started to relax her shoulders just a little. She was still scared, still unsure, but something inside her softened. Luke noticed the small change and smiled lightly. He told her they would stop soon, rest, and eat. She didn't remember the last time someone planned a day with her in mind. When they reached a small clearing, Luke helped her off the horse. She stumbled once, her legs stiff from the long ride, and he caught her arm gently to steady her. He didn't laugh or scold her. He only asked if she was okay. She nodded, though she wasn't sure of anything, except that the kindness in his voice made her eyes sting. She turned away quickly, so he wouldn't see. Luke made a small fire and handed her warm food. She hesitated at first, waiting for permission, waiting for some hidden rule she might break. When he realized her fear, he reassured her that she didn't have to earn her meal. She didn't have to prove anything. She simply needed to eat, because she deserved to be cared for like any human being. It was such a simple thing being given food without conditions, but it felt huge to her. She ate slowly, trying to hide how hungry she was. Luke pretended not to notice, giving her the dignity she had never been offered before. When she finished, he handed her a blanket. She wrapped it around herself, surprised by its warmth. It wasn't scratchy or dirty. It smelled like fresh air and safety. That night, as she lay near the fire, she watched Luke keep a quiet watch. He didn't sleep until she was fully settled, making sure the night didn't frighten her. She saw him look at the stars once, and she wondered what he was thinking. Maybe he was thinking about how strange the day had been. Maybe he was wondering why fate brought her across his path. She wondered too. But as she drifted into sleep, she realized something important. Luke didn't take her for $5. He rescued her from being forgotten. And even though she didn't trust easily, she felt the first hint of something warm inside her hope. It was small, delicate, and new, but it was there. That alone made the hardest day of her life the beginning of something different. Begins with the girl waking up to the soft sound of birds and the smell of early morning air. She opened her eyes slowly, confused for a moment, unsure where she was. The bright sky above her was not the worn ceiling of an old tent or a crowded wagon. It was wide, open, and peaceful. She looked around and saw Luke already awake, tending to the fire they had used the night before. He wasn't loud or hurried. He moved in a way that made the morning feel calm and safe. She wrapped the blanket around her shoulders and stayed still for a moment, watching him quietly. Luke noticed her and smiled in a gentle way that made her relax. He asked if she slept well, and she nodded, though she didn't really know what good sleep felt like. It was strange to wake up without fear or noise. It felt new, almost unfamiliar. Luke handed her a small cup of warm tea. She held it carefully, trying not to spill. The warmth traveled through her fingers, and she took small sips. She wasn't used to being cared for so simply. The girl didn't know how to express her gratitude, but Luke didn't seem to expect anything from her. When she finished, he packed their things and lifted her onto the horse again. They continued their journey toward his ranch. The road stretched long and quiet, passing wide fields, tiny streams, and distant hills. She watched everything closely, wanting to remember it all. Every place she had lived before felt temporary, like something that could disappear overnight. But this land looked steady. It felt rooted and real. Luke talked occasionally, telling her little stories about the ranch, how one horse always tried to sneak extra oats, how a stray dog once followed him home and refused to leave, how the wind sometimes carried the sound of coyotes at night. but they stayed far from the house. None of these stories were grand. Yet, they brought a smile to her face. As the sun climbed higher, they reached a narrow wooden gate. Beyond it stretched a wide piece of land with grass swaying gently in the breeze. A few horses grazed near the fence, lifting their heads as they heard the horse approaching. The girl stared at them with wide eyes. She had never been this close to so many animals before. They looked strong yet calm, like they belonged to the earth itself. Luke helped her off the horse and let her stand on her own. She took small steps, as if afraid the ground might shift under her feet. Luke walked beside her, pointing toward the small house on the hill. It wasn't large or fancy. The walls were simple wood, the roof slightly worn, and the porch had a rocking chair that moved gently with the wind. But to her, it looked like something important, a real home, something stable. He opened the door and let her walk in first. The girl hesitated, then stepped inside. The air smelled of wood, soap, and something warm she couldn't name. The room was neat. There was a fireplace, a small table, a shelf holding a few books, and a kitchen corner with pots neatly arranged. She didn't know where to look first. Luke showed her the room where she could stay. It had a small bed, a dresser, and a window that looked toward the fields. It was simple, but it felt like a place meant for a person, not for storage or punishment. She stood by the window, unsure what to do. Luke told her she didn't have to start working or helping right away. He wanted her to rest first. She wasn't used to resting. Every day of her life before this had been filled with chores and worry. She didn't know how to just sit quietly without fear of being scolded. But Luke insisted she take her time. He left the room, giving her space to breathe. After a while, the girl walked out cautiously, exploring the house. Luke was in the kitchen preparing food. When he saw her, he gave her a small smile and asked if she wanted to help set the table. Her heart jumped in surprise. He wasn't giving her an order, he was giving her a choice. She nodded and carefully placed plates and cups on the table. She moved slowly, afraid of breaking something, but Luke didn't rush her. They ate a simple meal together. It was quiet, but comfortable. She didn't feel the need to hide her hunger. Luke talked about the ranch, how the morning work usually went, how the horses needed brushing in the evenings, and how the fence sometimes needed repairing after storms. She listened with interest, feeling that each word painted a picture of a life she wanted to understand. After lunch, Luke showed her around the ranch. He pointed out the barn, the feed shed, the fenced pastures, and the small river at the edge of the property. The girl followed him closely, taking in every detail. The animals approached her curiously. One of the horses nudged her shoulder gently, and she flinched, stepping back quickly. Luke placed a hand on the horse's neck and explained softly that the horse was greeting her. He taught her how to put out her hand gently so the horse could sniff it. At first, she was terrified the horse might bite. But when the animal brushed its warm nose against her hand, she felt a strange comfort. Something softened inside her. Luke noticed her interest and told her she could learn to care for the horses if she wanted. Her eyes brightened for the first time. She had never had anything to care for. No pets, no toys, no personal belongings. The idea of being trusted with something so gentle made her chest feel warm. She didn't speak much, but Luke could see her excitement in the way she watched the animals. As the day passed, she helped Luke carry water buckets, gather hay, and sweep the barn floor. She worked slowly but carefully. She feared making mistakes, but Luke never raised his voice. When she dropped a bucket by accident, the water splashed across the floor. She froze instantly. Her breath caught in her throat, waiting for anger or harsh words. Instead, Luke handed her a dry cloth and said, "It's all right. Just help me dry it." That simple sentence meant more to her than he realized. By evening, she felt tired, but in a peaceful way. Her hands were dusty, her hair messy, and her clothes smelled like hay. Yet she didn't feel ashamed. Luke walked her back to the house, and she washed her hands in the small sink. When she saw her reflection, she barely recognized herself. Her eyes looked less afraid. There was a softness there, a quiet spark she had never seen before. Luke prepared dinner, and they ate together again. After the meal, he sat on the porch, and she quietly joined him. The sky was painted in shades of orange and pink. The air was cool, and crickets began to sing. She sat on the porch step, while Luke sat in the rocking chair. They didn't talk much. The silence felt comfortable, as if they both understood that words weren't needed right now. Before bedtime, Luke told her she didn't need to fear anything in this house. He said she was safe. She nodded, though she wasn't sure her heart fully believed it yet. Trust didn't grow in a day, but she wanted to believe him. That night, she curled up in the small bed, feeling warm under the blanket. The wind outside was gentle, and the sound of the horses moving in the distance felt reassuring. As she drifted to sleep, she realized something important. She had entered this ranch as a frightened girl, unsure of her worth. But in just one day, she felt something she had never felt before she felt seen. Luke didn't treat her like a burden or a stranger. He treated her like a person who deserved respect. It wasn't a grand gesture or big words that made this place different. It was the small things, the gentle voice, the warm food, the clean room, the chance to choose, the patience, the kindness. Those small things built something monumental inside her heart. Hope that she could belong somewhere. She closed her eyes, knowing tomorrow would bring new experiences. She wasn't sure what her future looked like, but for the first time, she wanted to see it. Begins with the girl slowly getting used to life on the ranch. Every morning, the soft sound of birds woke her before the sun had fully risen. At first, she would lie still for several minutes, unsure if she was allowed to get up or if she should wait for instructions. But she soon learned that Luke didn't follow strict rules or expect her to be perfect. He only wanted her to feel comfortable and free to move at her own pace. That simple freedom felt new to her. One morning, she stepped outside quietly and found Luke feeding the horses. He gave her a warm smile and asked if she wanted to help. She nodded. He handed her a small bucket of oats and showed her how to hold it so the horses wouldn't knock it over. She watched his hands carefully, wanting to memorize everything. Luke's movements were slow and patient, never rushed, and she followed every step with full attention. The first time a horse tried to eat from her hand, she froze. Its large head and warm breath scared her. She felt her heartbeat rise, ready to step back. But Luke placed a steady hand on her shoulder and told her gently that the horse trusted her. His calm voice helped her breathe again. Slowly, she held out the bucket, and the horse dipped its head to eat. She felt a strange happiness rise inside her. For the first time, she felt like she was trusted with something important. Each day on the ranch followed a steady rhythm. Luke would handle the heavier tasks, and she would help with the lighter ones, brushing the horses, sweeping the barn floor, gathering water, and carrying small tools. The work didn't feel like punishment. It felt like part of a life she belonged to. And every small success made her want to learn more. Still, she carried old fears inside her. Whenever she dropped something, made a mistake, or moved too slowly, her body tensed automatically. She waited for a harsh voice or a cold stare. But Luke never reacted that way. If she spilled feed, he simply helped her sweep it up. If she forgot a step, he patiently showed her again. If she tripped over a hose, he only asked if she was hurt. These small moments slowly challenged everything she believed about herself. One afternoon, she was brushing one of the calmer horses when the brush slipped from her hand. The sound of it hitting the floor made her jump. She froze, shoulders raised, waiting for Luke to say something sharp. Instead, he picked up the brush, placed it gently back in her hand, and said she was doing well. That moment stayed in her heart. It made her realize that mistakes didn't mean she would be rejected. Slowly, trust began to grow between them. Not a sudden trust, but the kind built quietly through many small moments. Luke never forced her to speak about her past. He let her talk when she felt ready. Sometimes she sat near him while he fixed equipment, telling him little stories about places she had passed through with her parents. Her stories came out slowly, broken into small pieces, but Luke listened to every word with attention. One evening, they sat outside, under the fading light of the setting sun. She watched the sky turn pink and orange, while Luke repaired a broken stirrup strap. She asked why he helped her, when he didn't even know her. Luke paused for a moment, thinking carefully. He told her that sometimes life places people on our path for a reason, and when someone needs help, you don't look away. She thought about his words for a long time. Days turned into weeks, and she began to grow more confident. She walked with her head a little higher, spoke a little louder, and even laughed softly at the playful behavior of a young horse that loved to nudge her. Luke saw these changes and felt proud of her, but he never made her feel pressured. He simply encouraged her with small nods, gentle words, and quiet reassurance. One day, Luke decided to teach her how to ride. The idea frightened her. She had ridden behind him on their first journey, but controlling a horse herself felt impossible. Luke brought out the gentlest horse on the ranch, a calm brown mare with patient eyes. He explained how to sit, how to hold the reins, and how to guide the horse with gentle signals. She listened carefully, gripping the saddle tightly as he helped her climb on. At first, her hands shook. The mare stepped forward slowly, and she felt like she might fall. Luke walked beside her, holding the reins lightly in case she needed support. He told her she didn't have to be perfect. She just had to try. His words gave her courage. As the mare walked in small circles, she gradually relaxed. The fear didn't disappear completely, but it softened, replaced by a sense of quiet pride. When she managed to guide the mare a few steps on her own, Luke smiled broadly. She returned the smile. Shy, but real. As her trust grew, so did her sense of belonging. She began helping Luke in small ways, even without being asked. Organizing tools, folding blankets, checking the water troughs. She wanted to contribute because she cared, not because she feared punishment. Luke noticed her efforts and thanked her sincerely each time. His gratitude made her feel valued, something she had rarely felt before. But the world outside the ranch didn't stay quiet forever. One afternoon, while Luke was in town buying supplies, a neighbor stopped by the ranch. He asked the girl where she had come from and how long she had been staying. His tone felt sharp, like he was searching for something wrong. The girl didn't know how to answer and felt her throat tighten. Before she could say anything, he muttered something about stray children and walked away. When Luke returned, she told him what happened, her voice trembling. He told her she had nothing to fear, that she belonged here, and that no one had the right to question her safety. He spoke calmly, but there was a quiet strength in his voice that made her feel protected. She believed him more than she had believed anyone in her life. Still, small worries lingered in her mind. She feared that one day someone might come and take her away from this life she was slowly building. Luke seemed to sense her hidden anxieties. He reminded her often that she wasn't a burden, wasn't unwanted, and wasn't alone anymore. Every time he said it, the weight inside her chest lightened just a little. One night, she gathered enough courage to ask Luke if she could stay on the ranch for a long time. Her voice shook with fear of hearing no. Luke looked at her with sincere eyes and told her that as long as she wanted to stay, the ranch would be her home too. She felt tears prick her eyes, but she blinked them away, not wanting to cry. The relief she felt that night wrapped around her like a warm blanket. Over time, Luke taught her more skills: how to fix small things around the house, how to prepare simple meals, how to read basic ranch maps, and how to understand weather signs. Each new lesson gave her a sense of independence she had never known. She began to feel capable, not just safe, but her past still cast a shadow. Loud noises still startled her. Unexpected visitors made her uneasy, and sometimes, without warning, she worried that everything could disappear. Luke didn't try to erase her fears. Instead, he helped her push through them slowly, step by step. One evening, as they walked back from the river, she admitted quietly that she always felt she wasn't good enough. Luke stopped walking and gently told her that worth is not something someone gives. It is something a person already has, simply by being human. That simple sentence reached deep into her heart. She had never heard anything like it before. That night, she sat on her bed and realized that this ranch wasn't just a place to stay. It was becoming the first place in her life where she felt seen, respected, and safe to grow. She didn't fully understand the future yet, but she knew she wanted to be a part of this world Luke had opened for her. Trust was growing slowly, quietly, but surely. And for the first time in her life, she believed she might someday build a life she could be proud of. Begins on a peaceful afternoon. The sun rested high in the sky, casting warm light across the ranch. The girl had just finished brushing one of the horses and was carrying a bucket back toward the barn. She felt lighter these days, as if her heart had slowly learned how to breathe again. Luke was working on repairing a fence on the far side of the pasture, and she could hear the distant sound of his hammer tapping against the wood. Everything seemed calm, almost perfect. But sometimes, trouble arrives quietly, without warning. Around mid-afternoon, the sound of approaching footsteps reached her ears. She looked up and saw two men walking toward the ranch house. They weren't neighbors she recognized. Their coats were neatly buttoned, and their steps were firm and official. At first, she didn't understand who they were, but as they came closer, a strange tightness formed in her stomach. Something about the way they walked, the way they looked at everything, carefully, made her uneasy. The men introduced themselves as officers from the nearby town. They said they were there to ask a few questions. Their voices were polite, but their eyes seemed sharp, as if they were searching for something hidden. The girl froze. She didn't know what she should say or how she should act. She had never dealt with people like them before. Fear crept up her spine, making her hands tremble. Luke noticed the men from across the field. He set down his tools and walked toward the house, wiping sweat from his forehead. He greeted the officers politely, though he looked confused as to why they had come. They explained that someone in town had raised concerns. They said there were rumors about a young girl living on his ranch. Rumors that suggested she may have been taken or kept unfairly. The girl felt her chest tighten. She took a small step back, her breath growing shallow. Everything inside her screamed that something terrible was about to happen. She feared that they would take her away, drag her back to the life she had left behind, the life she never wanted to see again. The officers continued asking questions, writing notes, and looking at her in a way that made her feel small and exposed. Luke stayed calm, even though the situation was serious. He explained how he had met the girl, how he had seen her parents leave her behind, how he had stepped in because she had no one. He talked about the $5 not as a purchase, but as a sad moment where he couldn't watch a child be abandoned. He spoke honestly, without fear, without anger. His voice stayed steady, but the officers wanted more. They asked the girl to confirm his story. Her voice shook when she tried to speak. The words stuck in her throat, as if her past memories were holding them there. She looked down at her shoes, her fingers twisting nervously. One of the officers frowned slightly, misinterpreting her silence. Luke noticed. He stepped closer, but not in a protective or controlling way, just enough to let her know he was there. He told the officers gently that she was easily frightened and that they needed to speak to her softly. Then, he turned to her and encouraged her with a calm voice. saying she could speak if she wanted. He didn't tell her what to say. He didn't pressure her. He only supported her. She finally lifted her head. Her voice was quiet, barely above a whisper. But she spoke truth. She told the officers that she had never been forced to stay on the ranch. She explained that Luke treated her with respect, gave her food, kindness, and a place to rest. She said she had never been made to work without choice, never been hurt, never been spoken to harshly. The officers listened closely. Still, her words came slowly, as if she was afraid they wouldn't believe her. She kept glancing at Luke, drawing courage from his steady presence. She told them she felt safer on the ranch than she had ever felt anywhere else in her life. The officers exchanged looks. Their expressions softened slightly, but they weren't done. They asked more questions about her past, her old family, and how long she had been at the ranch. Each question made her heart race. She tried her best to answer, though some memories were hard to speak about. Luke patiently filled in the gaps when she didn't know what to say. After several long minutes, the officers asked if she wanted to stay on the ranch willingly. She didn't hesitate this time. She said yes, with clear, certain eyes. She said it softly, but with so much truth behind it that even the officers seemed moved. They nodded, taking notes quietly. Something in their posture changed. They no longer looked suspicious, but more understanding. One of the officers apologized if they had scared her. He explained that they had to check because children were important, and people talked in town. But he assured her she had done nothing wrong. They promised they only wanted to make sure she was safe. Hearing that made her shoulders relax a little. After finishing their questions, the officers prepared to leave. Luke walked them to the gate, speaking calmly, answering anything they still wondered about. The girl watched from the porch, feeling her heartbeat slow down. When the officers finally rode away, disappearing down the road, she let out a breath she had been holding for too long. Luke returned to the porch and sat beside her. He didn't scold her for being scared. He didn't blame her for anything. Instead, he spoke softly, telling her that she had done well. He told her that her voice mattered, and she had proven that she could speak for herself when it was important. But she still felt shaken. What if more people came? What if someone forced her to leave? She felt the fear rise again. Luke noticed the worry in her eyes. He reassured her gently that she wasn't going anywhere she didn't choose. He promised that he would always stand up for her, that the officers now understood the truth, and that no one would drag her away from a place where she was safe. That night, the girl found it hard to sleep. She kept replaying the officer's visit in her mind. She worried about the world outside the ranch, how quickly it could threaten the small peace she had found. But then she remembered how Luke had stood by her side, how he had spoken calmly, even under pressure, how he had waited patiently for her to find her voice. That memory soothed her fears. She slowly drifted into sleep, knowing she wasn't alone. The next morning, she woke up with a clearer mind. The fear of yesterday hadn't vanished fully, but it no longer controlled her. She stepped outside and found Luke repairing the fence again. When he saw her, he gave her the same warm smile he always did, as if yesterday hadn't shaken him at all. His simple smile made her heart settle. She walked to him and asked if she could help with the fence. He nodded and handed her a small hammer. She worked beside him, each strike of the hammer helping her rebuild not only the fence but also her sense of safety. She wasn't helpless. She wasn't voiceless. She realized something important that day. The world might misunderstand her story, but the truth would always be stronger. And with Luke beside her, she could face whatever came next. With the girl slowly growing into her new life, piece by piece. The days after the officer's visit passed more calmly than she expected. She still felt a small worry lingering inside her, but it no longer controlled her steps. Every morning when she opened her eyes, she reminded herself that she was here because she chose to be here, not because she was forced. Not because anyone owned her, but because she had finally found a place where she felt safe. The ranch continued to be her learning ground. She learned to feed the horses without trembling. She learned how to tie simple knots, repair small things, and help Luke keep the ranch running smoothly. Luke trusted her with more tasks as time passed, but he never pressured her. He always let her grow at her own pace. That trust meant more to her than any gift she had ever received. She became stronger too. She woke up before sunrise, helped with chores, and even began to laugh quietly at the playful barn animals. The horses seemed to sense her gentle nature. One of them, the calm brown mare she had learned to ride, followed her like a shadow. Whenever she entered the barn, the mare would nudge her shoulder softly, as if greeting an old friend. The girl found comfort in that simple gesture. It reminded her that she mattered. Luke noticed how much she had changed. Her shoulders no longer stayed tense all day. Her eyes no longer stayed fixed on the ground. She spoke a little more, smiled a little more, and moved with a confidence that had once seemed impossible. He never took credit for her growth. He simply encouraged her, one day at a time. As weeks turned into months, the girl began to think about her future, something she had never dared to imagine before. In the past, she lived day to day, hoping only to survive. But life at the ranch taught her something important. She was allowed to dream. She started thinking about going to school regularly, learning to read better, maybe even helping Luke with ranch books and records someday. She didn't know exactly what she wanted, but the simple fact that she could dream made her feel hopeful. She also began to understand respect, not the kind she had seen before: cold, forced, or demanded. Luke showed her respect through small acts, by asking her opinion, by trusting her with tasks, by listening when she spoke, and by giving her space when she felt overwhelmed. She realized respect wasn't something that came from fear. It came from kindness, patience, and honesty. And it grew quietly, over time. One day, Luke suggested they visit the town together. She felt nervous, but agreed. She wanted to show herself she wasn't afraid of the world. They rode into town on horseback, and people watched with curiosity. Some had heard strange rumors before, but now they saw the truth for themselves. They saw a girl sitting proudly on her horse, not as a burden or someone taken in pity, but as someone with dignity. In the general store, the girl helped Luke choose supplies. The shopkeeper greeted her kindly, asking how she was settling into ranch life. She answered softly but clearly, surprising even herself with how steady her voice sounded. Luke watched her with quiet pride. While walking through the town square, a woman approached them with a warm smile. She said she had heard about the girl and was glad she was in a safe place now. The girl didn't know how to respond at first. Compliments were something she wasn't used to, but she managed a small smile and thanked the woman. It was a simple interaction, but to her, it meant more than words could describe. For the first time, people saw her as part of a community, not as a rumor, not as a burden, but as a young girl with a future. As they rode back to the ranch that afternoon, the wind brushed softly against her face. She held the reins with confidence, guiding her mare without needing Luke's steadying hand. It was a quiet victory, but a meaningful one. She felt stronger, more sure of herself. Luke rode beside her, not leading her, not directing her, just riding as an equal partner on the same path. Back at the ranch, she continued building her life. She turned her small room into a space that reflected who she was becoming. She placed a small wooden horse figure Luke had carved for her on the windowsill. She folded her blanket neatly each morning. She kept her few belongings organized with care. This room wasn't just a place to sleep anymore. It was a place where she could grow. Evenings on the ranch became her favorite time. The sky turned shades of orange and purple. The animals settled quietly, and the wind carried a peaceful hum across the land. Luke often sat on the porch, and she would join him, sometimes speaking softly about her day, other times simply enjoying the silence. Luke never rushed her to talk, and she liked that. His presence itself was comforting. One night, she asked Luke if he ever regretted taking her in. Luke looked at her with surprise, then with deep sincerity. He told her that helping someone in need was never a mistake. He said she had brought light into the ranch, that her presence made the work feel easier, the days feel warmer, and the world feel more meaningful. She felt her heart swell with emotion. She didn't cry, but her eyes softened with gratitude. She thought back to the day she arrived. She remembered how she had clung to her bag, unsure of what was happening. She remembered the fear, the confusion, the emptiness, and she contrasted it with her life now, a life filled with routine, learning, care, and quiet joy. Luke hadn't just given her a place to stay. He had given her dignity. He had shown her that she had worth. As time passed, the girl's confidence grew so much that Luke began teaching her more advanced tasks: how to mend fences, how to manage feed properly, how to help with mild medical care for the animals. She soaked up every lesson, eager to learn. Luke often said she had a natural gift with animals because they trusted her gentle nature. Hearing that made her heart glow with pride. Eventually, even the people in town began to speak kindly about her. They saw her helping at the ranch, greeting neighbors when she visited with Luke, and carrying herself with quiet strength. The rumors from the past faded away, replaced by respect. The girl didn't seek attention, but she appreciated being seen for who she truly was. One evening, after finishing their work, Luke and the girl stood by the fence, watching the horses graze under the golden twilight. She took a deep breath and told Luke that she wanted to stay on the ranch for as long as he would have her. Her voice didn't tremble this time. It was steady, sure, and full of hope. Luke didn't even hesitate. He told her she was already part of this place. She belonged here just as much as the wind, the soil, and the horses. Hearing those words felt like the final piece of a puzzle settling into place. Her life, once filled with fear and uncertainty, now felt full and meaningful. She wasn't a girl who had been handed away anymore. She was someone who had built herself back up with courage and patience, and she had done it with the support of someone who treated her with simple, honest respect. As the stars appeared in the sky, she looked out over the land that had become her home. She felt grateful for the safety, for the kindness, for the chance to become someone she could be proud of. She understood now that respect wasn't a gift someone handed you. It was something you discovered inside yourself when surrounded by people who believed in your worth. And in the heart of that peaceful ranch, she finally felt whole.